You know those experiences that just never leave you, the ones that haunt your every waking moment because they scared you all the way down into your soul. Sometimes people write into Freethinker Project and share their wild stories with us, and I'm not going to lie, some of them are truly fascinating, and others are completely terrifying. So, having said that, we would like to share some of them with you. Here are 10 stories that might keep you up at night. Some are seriously spooky. So, a friend was out driving one evening on a remote backcountry road in Maine. Picture it. Trees everywhere, stretching as far as you can see, and the truck's headlights, the only thing lighting up the road as the car flew through the darkness. This friend wasn't wearing their glasses and got a bit zoned out. Suddenly, they noticed something up ahead on the road. They couldn't make out the details from a distance, but lucky for them, they were already moving closer as the car continued down the road. At first, they thought it was a baby, but in the back of their mind, they were like, no way, it can't be. But as they got closer, it really did look like a baby. They stopped the truck, got out, and walked over to check. As they got nearer, the baby seemed to move. On closer look, they saw it was being pulled by a string, and in that moment, the reality of the situation hit them like a semi-truck. They didn't give it a second thought before they turned and sprinted back to the truck, jumped in, and sped away without looking back. They didn't want to know what was waiting for them on the other side of that string. So, a few years back, my mom kept having this really disturbing recurring nightmare. To set the scene, there's this mirror at the end of my parents' bedroom, facing their bed. I know it sounds unbelievable, but sometimes that mirror would turn transparent, and a man would suddenly appear in the mirror when this happened. One day, my parents were redecorating and decided to remove the mirror from the wall. And when they did, to their absolute horror, they found that there was a hole in the wall hidden behind the mirror. When they looked inside the hole that had been hidden, which was large enough for a person to fit through, by the way, they found an empty room, and it was obvious that someone had been living in there at some point. They're still freaked out about it to this day. So, my girlfriend and I were driving late at night in Waco, Texas. The roads were totally deserted, and it was super quiet. No cars around, nothing. Everything seemed normal until we noticed someone standing on the corner. Then, I heard a man's voice whisper, "You're going the wrong way." Weirdly enough, I realized I was driving the wrong way, so I made a U-turn. That took us straight to the main highway. I looked over at my girlfriend and asked if she heard the voice too. She got really scared and started crying, saying she heard it as well. She was freaking out, wondering if she was losing her mind. Honestly, we both thought we were. I couldn't believe it at first when my wife told me about something that happened to her when she was 6. She fell into a deep well near an old farmhouse where she grew up. She was just a little girl, so climbing out seemed impossible. She was terrified and didn't know what to do. While panicking, she heard a girl's voice telling her not to worry. The voice told her to look for larger stones that were sticking out enough for her to grab. The voice encouraged her to climb and be brave. Incredibly, she managed to climb out on her own. Or did she? When she told her mom what happened, she found out that years ago, another little girl had drowned in that same well. Several years ago, I was out jogging with my dog, exploring some fields behind my place, we came across this old abandoned mansion. From what I'd heard, it had been deserted for about 20 years. The previous owner was some wealthy guy who lost his money, and the bank took over. Curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to take a look around. It seemed like someone had left in a hurry. The place was pretty cleared out, hardly any furniture or stuff left behind. After I got home, I took a shower and then headed to the kitchen to make a sandwich. That's when I noticed a note on the table. It read, "You come into my house, I come into your house." I was immediately freaked out. I grabbed my dog and bolted. I called the police, and they told me it was probably just a squatter who had followed me home. But I didn't remember seeing anyone around when I got back. Was it a ghost or some kind of prank? I'll never go back to that old house again. My dad and I used to live in this house where weird stuff kept happening. Curtains would move without any breeze. Things would get moved around, and more. I'm convinced we were being haunted by some kind of poltergeist. It wasn't normal, and it made everyone uncomfortable. One day, things got really bad. My stepmom and I were alone in the house when I started smelling something burning. You know that smell when a match is struck? It was exactly like that. The smell got stronger and stronger. So we went through the house, trying to find the source. We eventually found it coming from inside the pantry. There was a pile of burnt matches about 10 inches wide and 3 inches high, and they were burning. Neither of us had been anywhere near the pantry since we'd been watching a movie together. Ironically, it was a horror movie. We were sure this wasn't an accident. How those matches were burning was seriously strange. We couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if this had started later. Like in the early morning hours, someone could have been hurt or worse. Fed up with all the weirdness, my parents and I moved away a few months later. I used to work at a gun range where people come to practice their shooting skills. As you'd expect, we got some pretty rough characters. Think "Don't Tread on Me" shirts and decals on their trucks. I always tried to stay alert and keep an eye on things. The range had these big windows where you could see people shooting. One day, I noticed a lady inside the range. I didn't even see her come in, but I didn't think much of it at first. She had as much right to be there as anyone else, so I went about my business. Then it happened again a few weeks later. Somehow, I kept missing her entering the range. This happened several more times before I found out the creepy truth. A lady had rented a gun, walked into the range, and shot herself in the head. Turns out, I'd been seeing a ghost. Needless to say, I don't work at the gun range anymore. Before my uncle married my aunt, he lived with his first wife and their 2 kids. Sadly, his first wife passed away suddenly from a terminal illness. She was a really kind person, always nice to everyone, but she absolutely hated these long, flowing green curtains in their living room. She would often apologize to guests about those hideous green curtains, mentioning in countless conversations how much she despised them. For some reason, my uncle never got rid of them. Maybe they couldn't afford new ones, or just couldn't find replacements they both liked. So, the green curtains stayed. The night she died, after spending her final days in the hospital, my uncle and cousins returned home, obviously devastated. About an hour later, the green curtains came crashing down. They were all in shock and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They immediately threw the green curtains in the trash. I believe she hated those curtains so much that she came back from beyond the grave to get rid of them. Later, They picked up some new curtains that they thought she would have liked. As a police officer, I got dispatched to a home around 1 a.m. one night. My partner and I arrived and started talking to the residents. They explained that they had seen several people wearing masks. One of them recognizable as Jason Voorhees from the horror movies, and the other mask was unrecognizable. These masked figures were spotted in the yard across the street. This all went down about 2 weeks after Halloween, so it didn't seem too far-fetched. We patrolled the area, but didn't see anything suspicious. The residents seemed sober and mentally stable, not like the usual calls we get from meth addicts seeing things. About an hour later, we got another call to the same area. This time, our dispatcher was on the phone with the residents, guiding us as we surrounded the area. There were 5 of us cops positioned strategically to catch these prowlers. Dispatch told us the masked suspects were in the yard next to a shed. I warned them and banged on the shed door. When I opened it, the shed was empty. We searched high and low, but found nothing. All we heard was a quiet shh sound. It was a bizarre situation, something I couldn't explain logically. It felt like those 2 characters were either ghosts or something else entirely. Last summer, me and my high school buddies hit up our favorite amusement park. It was a pretty typical day for us, riding rides and hanging out. We met up with another friend and spent the whole day together until the park closed. Later that evening, I found out there was a big party that I missed. When I got home, I checked Facebook and things got weird. The same friend who was with us at the park was also at the party. It didn't make sense. How could he be in 2 places at once? He was with us from 4 to 10 p.m. at the park, but he was also at the party from 4 to midnight. After a few days, I asked him if he remembered being at the amusement park with us. My heart sank when he said no. He didn't remember being there at all. It still creeps me out, and I'm still trying to figure out what really happened that day. Hey everyone, if you're spooked by our stories, remember to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And for even more occult goodness, head over to the Free Thinker Project website. They've got a growing inventory of all things occult waiting for you. Find the link in the description box. Thanks for listening, and I will see you again very, very soon.